the video blog for Tuesday, October 21st, 2014. Let's take a look at the climatology chart, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. Of course, the first part of the hurricane season typically pretty slow. Then we normally have a peak here around mid-September, and then a secondary peak around mid-October, and then a much lesser tertiary peak, or the third peak, around the first few days of November, we'll call it. Really didn't have much of a peak here this year in September. It was kind of flat, but we have had a pretty good uptick here at this point in the season, in and around the 15th of October, through most recently, which included Hurricane Gonzalo. So it just shows you that the hurricane season is not over until it's over way over here in November 30th in that time frame. So we have a ways to go. Looking at the climatology on a map shows us that the second third of October, the 11th through the 20th, and this is the time frame that featured Gonzalo, you got a large area of spread out activity here, part of it in the tropics, part of it in the subtropics, higher concentration in the western Caribbean, and a few areas in the Gulf, and the East Pacific tends to stay pretty busy throughout. Then, at the last third of the month, the 21st through the 31st, less activity overall, pretty high concentration in the western Caribbean and the southwest Atlantic. And that'll be the focus of what we look at for today. Now, a big part of the reason behind that, water temperatures, the upper ocean heat content. This is just a few days old from the NOAA AOML site, but showing still very high ocean heat content value, meaning that the ocean is not only warm at the surface, but that warmth extends down several hundred feet into the ocean, providing what we call this tropical cyclone heat potential, or upper ocean heat content, that gives us way more fuel than just having warm water at the surface. And it's still, in many areas here, we're talking at the middle and upper part of the scale, especially in and around the greater Antilles, Florida, and the Northwest Caribbean Sea in that vicinity. So a lot to watch. Even though it's mid-October, headed towards late October, we're still very much in the season. So this is the area that's been getting a little bit of attention in the hurricane social media circles. Invest area 93L. A couple things to point out. I think you can clearly see that the wind is blowing generally in one direction here. You don't see it kind of fanning out in a nice clockwise fashion. And secondly, you don't see a lot of organization. It's just sort of a large disturbance and not really organizing and concentrating around a solid area of low pressure. In fact, if we look at the upper level winds here from the University of Wisconsin site, this is the Bay of Campeche right over here, and this is where the disturbance is located, 93L. And look at that, the upper level winds going right across the top. That is not favorable for development, so we can put an X in here. Big rainmaker, yes, but I don't think this has much of a chance to develop because the flow is across the system instead of allowing it to fill up inside of an umbrella, so to speak, where the upper level winds are protective and allowing for the upward motion to take place without those tops being blown off. In fact, if we look at the shear chart specifically here, you see those winds coming out very strong, anywhere from 30 to 50 knots across this region, so it's not going to have a big chance to develop. The guidance doesn't really matter at this point what happens because it's just a large mess. The intensity models, nothing showing it too much above 50 knots here, so not very strong. Even if it does develop, it wouldn't be a big wind maker. But the rain could be a big issue here as this energy spreads out across the Yucatan, parts of Cuba, and maybe even South Florida, the Bahamas, and then eventually up here towards Bermuda, which I'll show you in a moment why I think that could be. So this is the 5-day plot. Let me go back to the beginning here, and this is the initial conditions. Here's our low pressure area tucked in the Bay of Campeche, and if we let this just play, there's going to be some gray frames in here, just the bad animation. And we're going out to 51 hours, so roughly 2 days from now. You see still a very large, loosely defined system curled up in and around the Yucatan. Light winds, 20-30 miles an hour at the most. Moving on out into time, 72 hours into the future, this will be valid. Thursday into Friday. The low pressure area might start to try to organize a little bit more heading into the Florida Straits over that very, very warm upper ocean heat content, but still not very bundled and focused. As we move through Friday, though, pretty heavy rain event it looks like for south and southeast Florida. Going to want to keep an eye on this. Not very much of a wind generating system at this point, but very heavy rainfall in an area of very dense population. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that if you have plans in South Florida, and that includes the Keys and then over into the northern Bahamas as well. So remember, these tropical systems are not just about the wind and the storm surge. Heavy rainfall can be detrimental. It can be deadly. Traffic accidents caused by the heavy rain. All of this stuff adds up and it matters. Understanding these impacts and being aware is very, very important. So as we go through time here, it looks like on Saturday, through the day, the system finally starts to try to organize, even though it's kind of elongated, maybe a subtropical hybrid type system or a very ugly looking tropical storm. That's Bermuda right there, still dealing with the aftermath of Gonzalo, although doing that very well, I might add. They recover quickly out there. This may come into play on Saturday into Saturday afternoon with some pretty squally weather for Bermuda. Got to watch this closely. Then, as I showed you here, a little sneak preview a minute ago, day 5, this starts to lift out going past Bermuda, but down here in the Caribbean Sea, something stays behind and tries to start to develop here at day 5. So we're going to have to watch that because it is climatologically favored at this time of year, as I showed you in the early map. So we're going to keep a watch on that very closely because, hey, it's still hurricane season, right? We saw that for sure with Gonzalo. What we didn't see in September, we're making up for here in October. All right, well, that is it from me for today. Thanks, as always, for tuning in. For HurricaneTrack.com, I am Mark Sudduth, and, of course, for Hurricane Pro and HD, the two best hurricane tracking apps out there, in my opinion. I am Mark Sudduth. Good to be here again. I will, if nothing else comes up this week, I'll be back on Monday. But I think we'll keep an eye on what's going on down in the Caribbean, and so you can expect another post on Wednesday.